All right. Hello, everyone. It's Mr. Barden here. This is the last video I'm going to be recording kind of in a series. So if you're watching all of these kind of in a row well after the fact that they've gone live, you've probably noticed I've had the same shirt and everything. So it'll probably change for next time. I don't know. I can't read the future. Um, Anyways, this video is intended for the people teaching the programming digital media course or similar ones. If you're not one of those people, then I definitely recommend checking out some of the other videos. I've got a link to a playlist of those in the description below. It's not that we go over different content and things like that. It's just that I kind of gear a lot of my delivery and tips and things like that towards the teachers. It also tends to be a little bit more condensed. Uh, so, with that being said, I'm going to more or less hop into it. If you learned something in this video or you enjoy it, definitely consider giving it a like, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff. If anything I say doesn't make sense, you have any questions, concerns, or you want me to cover something specific, put those in the comments down below and I'll respond to those as needed. One thing I am doing is as people kind of request certain topics to be covered is if I, am able to cover it, I will make a separate video for that and stick that in a separate playlist. So let's kind of jump right into it. So this video is all about making and using arrays. Variables to kind of get into what that is are great and powerful tools. I had a video a few back about that if you wanted to check that out. Um, but basically, an array is like a variable. They're very similar, except they contain multiple values instead of just one. So the key aspect of a variable is that you can stick a single value into it. You can look at it, see what it is, use it for stuff. You can take that old value out, put a new one in. I did a whole little metaphor with a cup that's no longer on my desk. Um, that kind of thing. An array does all pretty much all the same things except they contain multiple values. So you can combine several values into one big array with one unique name. You can look at specific values, all of them at once. You can replace certain ones, things of that nature. It's very useful, but not applicable for everything. Um, so that's where we're going right here. I most commonly use arrays when dealing with colors, or if I again just have to have a lot of data all in um, the same source. But again, it kind of depends on what you might need. But these are a very important tool. So, for example, I've got this line, this code right here, and it's setting up a whole bunch of RGB values, and if we click, this is all that's really happening, but this is a lot of variables here. Now, it might not be a thing that happens a lot with modern computers, but particularly if you're on like a Chromebook or something similar, it may not have the most processing power and RAM. Uh, you making less variables, generally speaking, is better, especially if you're making like a big project and it's not just a small little assignment. Just because each of them does take up a little bit of the system memory, and you only have so much on your computer. So I've also got this, we're setting the levels. There's just a lot of stuff to manage just outside of the technical aspects of it. So we can make an array to make things a little bit easier. So let's do that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put an ellipse here. 2 divided by 2. All right. So, boom, there's the ellipse. Let's say I want to fill it with something. For now, I'll just make it black. To make an array, it begins just like a variable. We give it a name, circle color. So we declare it just like normal. Only now, when we initialize it, we type these brackets. And usually, I tell my students that with a variable, you can just declare it and initialize it later. But with an array, I recommend initializing it as an array, and it can be empty like this with no problems. Right now, at least. So that way you know that this is supposed to be an array, and the computer knows, and you can just easily put your values in. So if you look through my codes, occasionally you'll see a bunch of stuff like this, and then we'll stick things in it as needed. But in here, you can just enter in all of your different elements. Each of the spots in there is called an element, and just separate them by commas. So let's say 100 comma, this is colors, so less than whatever. So we're going to represent a color. I'll have a whole lesson on colors, but essentially it's just the amount of red, the amount of green, the amount of blue in that color. So now I could go in and say circle color, and it's going to be this color. That's what apparently I drew. We can do a console.log. Circle color. And we can see that it is an array with these 3 numbers in that order. So again, we can refer to the entire array all at once. That's great. Let's do another one. Let square 1. Why not? Equal another empty array. Okay, so what we'll do here, and I'm going to just comment this out to avoid driving me nuts, is we'll use this to draw a particular square. So let's say let's just do it right in the middle. 200, 200, that's not a 2. There we go. Actually, this, yeah, I'll leave it the same. We'll make this 0 instead. Why not? So we got 4 values right here. So basically what I'm pulling up with this is that we can refer to a specific single element in our array instead of the thing as a whole, like I've done right here. So to talk to an entire array and get all of the values is useful, can potentially be buggy. It depends on what you're doing. So I'm not going to dive into that until people give me specific questions. But to refer to the entire array at once, you just talk to it like you would any variable. To talk to a specific element in the array, you type out the name and then the brackets. Inside the brackets, you put the number. So I'm going to need 4 of these. 2, 3, 4. There we are. So here we want numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. There it is. I'm going to just comment out the ellipse for now. Boop, there's the thing. Maybe I wanted to, maybe I wanted to make that centered on the thing. There we go. But basically, each of these has a specific number attached to it. So what this is saying is look at the square, specifically the 0 index, specifically the 1 index, the 2 index, and so on. So these lists all start with the number are on position 0. All right, they start counting from 0. And this is basically just saying what I'm doing right here. It's pulling out that specific index. So it starts at 0. So even though when we're looking at it, this is the first number, to talk to it, we need to tell it to talk to position 0, and then position 1, position 2, position 3, and so on. That's just the way most computers are built. It's called 0 index. So that means it starts counting at 0. So that's why a lot of times, 0 to 255, 0 to 127, ranges like that. So that's why we start at 0 here, and you can tell it whatever you want. We can swap these numbers around, get a different shape, but they're all related to this square, so that's why I've put them all in this array. Now, the computer doesn't care that this is supposed to be for a rectangle down here. It doesn't know, it doesn't care. All it knows is that we have these values saved, and then we're going to build a rectangle using whatever's inside of there. So one thing that might be helpful is to add a comment. So we get, x, y, width, height are RGB, it's stuff like that, just so you know what is what. Pretty helpful right there. Um, that's my YouTube dashboard. All right, there we are. Okay, so I'm going to go through kind of two things. This is not a very long lesson, so probably one of the shorter ones in the whole series, to be completely honest, because we've already talked about variables, and I don't have to explain a lot of that conceptually. Um, so whenever you, just like a variable, these things don't have to be numbers. They can be strings. They can be objects. We haven't talked about objects. They can be additional arrays. Anything that you could put in a variable can be in an element of an array. So I've got this code right here. And what's happening is we have square colors of red, orange, light green, and gold. We're checking how many times we've clicked the mouse and whatever the current color is. Although right now the computer doesn't really care what that is. Nothing's different in setup except the background doesn't change. But basically what we're happening here is we're filling we're setting that by saying, all right, whatever in the square colors, whatever the current color is, we're going to fill the square with that. So again, we'll be changing this number, and because each of these elements, these 4 elements, has a unique number, then by changing that number, it'll change what color is here. So we just draw the rectangle. So then every time we press the mouse, we're going to increase the click count. So it's just going to track that number, and then it's going to be current color is going to be assigned the value of whatever the click count is modulo 4. And the reason it's 4 is because we have 4 options here. So every time I click on the canvas, it will go through and change the color. So as I click this, orange, light green, gold, red, orange, light green, gold, red, orange, light green, gold. This is just another way to use modulo because, again, that was a thing I mentioned in a previous video about math. Same one as the variables. Again, this is another way you can use it. Again, it's for that cyclic kind of, I want to say motion, but nothing's really moving. But you get the idea. We're kind of cycling through all of this stuff using modulo just to affect some numbers, really basic math. And then we're just applying those numbers in interesting ways. So by storing it in a variable, we can change it. We can have things adapt to whatever we need. Boom. That's right there. One thing I want to pull up, and I really should have had this tab ready to go. We're just going to hop into here to, so there's a few pages right at the beginning. You can just Google whatever you might need to help with, JavaScript, whatever. But Mozilla has some useful stuff, as well as W3 Schools has other useful things. There's a few other sources as well. But let's just go with here. So basically, this is all about arrays. And we'll get into this a bit, but all of these methods we have right here, these are things we can do with them. You can do a lot of stuff with arrays. You can combine them, you can reverse them, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. It depends on what you need, which is why I don't normally go through all of these in class. It just kind of depends on the context of the class. But the ones I do like to mention are these two right here, specifically push, which is basically you have an array, and let's say we want to push cow. So if we run this, basically it's adding in the this extra element to the end. So we're gonna dot push cows when we want to. Console.log, yes, console.log animals. Yep. So basically, whenever you have the name, it's going to be the name of your array dot push, and that's going to get the parentheses, and whatever you type in here gets added into your array. So to kind of see that in action, we'll do this. So you can add. Well, no, let's do this. Let my array like so, and let's I'll go in here And I'm just going to make another function mouse pressed. This is a function in P5 that every time you click the mouse, it'll do whatever you tell it to. So let's say my array dot push, and we can say I'm just going to do frame count. I forgot an E. So now every time I click the mouse, we'll add that to the array. We can say console dot log my array. Boop. So every time I click the mouse, it's adding an additional value to that array. In this case, it's just whatever the frame count is. If you have too many, you can open it up and you can see index 0 is 59, index 13 is whatever you want. So that's a useful little feature in the console there. But this is a way you can add whatever you want to the end of your array. That's an important distinction, is that the push method of an array, again, it's array name dot push. We'll get into the dot notation later on. Is what I tell my students, and then we get into it later on, and then they're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense." But anyways, and then it's whatever you tell it to push. You can, like we saw here, you can add in multiple things as well if you want, however many you want to add in. Pop is essentially the opposite. It removes the last element of an array. So if I run this, tomato, so basically we're going to console.log plants.pop. So console.log plants pop. So you see that we can get the value back if we want to, and that's why we get tomato, because again, this is the initial thing right here, tomato, and then it's been popped, so tomato is no longer on the list. We can run the pop again, and now kale is no longer on the list. So again, it's only one at a time, but this is how you can remove elements from your array. So maybe you've added one too many things, you can remove it with pop. And then again, you can do a lot of stuff with these arrays. For each is another common one that pops up. You can see if it includes something. There's other kinds of things you can do, combining, running through. It's a whole lot of stuff. But like for each, you can copy this if you want, but basically it'll do in this one it'll run something for each array, for each element in the array. So basically it does a function that you give it, which right there, and it's just going to console.log that. It's pretty straightforward, but I'll let you explore that more on your own. All right, so I'll have links to this page and everything, this one, and the code in the description. Like I said, relatively short video comparatively speaking. I'll add comments kind of like I normally do here. Again, arrays, very useful. In terms of assignments, I don't really have a particular assignment. I'll usually think of one on the fly for my students, but in the review is one that combines specifically arrays and for loops. So by using the push and then a for loop, you can get a code that does this kind of thing here. And I'm not going to go through it right now because we haven't talked about loops. That's going to be a video that I'm going to record tomorrow or the day after, and you'll see it pop up shortly on YouTube. All right, so that's it for me today. Again, if you learned something, found it useful, definitely give it a like, subscribe, all the YouTube boring stuff. If you have any questions or specific concerns, or maybe you want to see me cover a very specific topic, put that in the comments down below, and if it's something I can cover, I will cover it. That's going to be it for me, and I'll see you all the next time that I see you. Bye.